We're here today talking with Isabelle Hains of Bathurst, New Brunswick. Isabelle, it's 2 days before the 3rd anniversary of the Boys in Red tragedy, which occurred in Bathurst, New Brunswick on January 12, 2008. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit what happened that night and how it impacted on your life.
Well, that day started off as a normal day for us. I drove Daniel to school, and I knew that he had a basketball game that night, and there was a storm alert that there was bad weather conditions, and the team left that afternoon and went to Moncton in a 15-passenger van, and they drove back home that night. And that evening, that day changed my life and took the life of my son that night. And ever since that day, I've been wondering why it happened.
Can you tell me what role 15 passenger vans played in the death of Daniel, your son, and the 7 other victims of the Boys in Red tragedy, which included 6 other members of the Bathurst High School Phantoms basketball team? What if this would have been, say, a yellow school bus or perhaps a multifunction activity bus? Would the outcome have been different? And tell me a little bit what you know about the history of these 15 passenger vans.
Well, the last 3 years I've been educating myself on 15 passenger vans and trying just to absorb all the information I can, checking on the internet and reading up on the 15 passenger vans and looking at videos, and I found out through the CSA, the Canadian Standards Association, that they had a committee that was formed before the death of our sons, and they recommended to the Department of Transportation that there is alternate vehicles that they could use besides 15 passenger vans. And 15 passenger vans have a high center of gravity where they had put seats in, and that they were, first of all, they were originally used for cargo and cargo only. They were never intended to put people in it. And they thought that it would be a cheaper way of transporting people in a 15 passenger van by putting seats in, and then I found out that there was no protection for the children, that it was made of light metal and cardboard and glass, and that the vehicles easily can lose control, and but the main part to me is that there was no safety for the children, because they had 3 benches in it. There was only one way to get out, which was a side door, and an exit door which was covered with a bench. And these vehicles that were on the highway being used by innocent children, like these boys here, and other children in other schools across Canada, that the Department of Education and the Department of Transportation Public Safety all knew that these vehicles were not safe for students or people, but they still use them.
What evidence do you have that people with the power and authority to make these decisions about using 15 passenger vans for transporting children already knew that there was a better alternative in the form of what they call these multifunction activity buses that we're looking at right now? What evidence do you have?
Well, the evidence that I have is that the Canadian Standards Association had formed a committee and presented the concerns to the Department of Transportation, letting them know that there were other vehicles, and that also through the NHTSA, which is the National Transportation Highway in the U.S., had done a lot of research on it. And since the 1970s, over 40 years now, that these vehicles were not safe for people to be in. And I don't understand why the government didn't step up to the plate and say we're never going to use these vehicles for students or for youth groups or daycares. And I still don't understand today, after our children's deaths, that they still didn't make those changes.
Why do you think that school boards and district, like student councils and departments of education, and for that matter, choir groups, Boy Scouts, daycares, why do they use 15-passenger vans to transport human beings when it's been known for 20, 30, 40 years that they're called death traps? Why do you think they do that?
Well, I assume that maybe it's because they think it's cheaper. But cheaper is not safe. It's not. And for the little bit of extra dollars to keep your loved ones safe and invest the money into a multifunction activity bus that's made like a cage and that has all the safety features and the crashworthiness and the emergency exits in the rear and an aisle where the children can be able to get out if they need to, and have the safety glass. This is the vehicle that's the vehicle that they should be using now for transporting students and the youth across Canada.
Why do you think that people who have the power and authority to make those kinds of decisions don't choose what has clearly been indicated by experts in the field, including the Canadian Standards Association, to be a superior vehicle for transporting students? Why do you think that they don't use that vehicle? What's their story? What's the excuse they always give?
The excuse to give is that it costs money, and that they never did the test here in Canada. But when we met with Minister Chuck Strahl in September, they said they were going to do a review on it and that they were going to do a crashworthiness test on the 15-passenger vans.
Who's Minister Chuck Strahl?
Minister Chuck Strahl is for the Department of Transportation here in Canada, and we're still waiting from the department to find out what the review is. And
okay, let's talk about that in part 2 of this interview.